want to welcome Fit Brain Club back to our program. Grace Carpenter, along with our guest, Karen Morin, registered nurse and advocate for end-of-life procedures and consultations. Thank you guys for joining us. Now, Grace, you have an event coming up on the 22nd that's going to be, that Karen's going to be part of. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, it's Saddleback Medical Center Foundation is co-sponsoring the event with the Fit Brain Club. And so we're going to be, this is like our second annual end-of-life event stressing palliative, hospice, and medical aid and dying. And it's on Tuesday, as you said, July 22nd at 7 p.m. in the ballroom, Sierra Ballroom. That's Gate 12, everybody. Clubhouse 2. We play that game. And the address is on the flyer. It's being advertised. Of course, it's on the screen. But it's being well advertised by even Bridge Builders Club. Everybody's on board for this because we're so excited with the panel. First of all, we have all the hospice and palliative care panel members, including Dr. Truelove, who is the director of palliative care at Memorial Care Saddleback Medical Center. And then we have all of the other ones will be Susan Platt and Pamela Rubin Banks and Michael Svarek.
There we go. I was going to let you say that last name.
I know. I've been practicing that. I've been on a few events with Michael, so I can finally say Svarek. And we're so looking forward to it because last year we didn't know if it would be a typical Fit Brain Club event where we get about 60 people. 162 people showed up.
Wow.
And they told wonderful, wonderful stories and questions like, well, what if my primary care says I can't have medical aid and dying? So Karen will address that. And she has a lot to say about that.
Well, Karen, let's get talking on that. Now, in California, it passed in 2016. You were helped in terms of advocacy to get that on the books and get that passed in California. So why are you in this field? What drew you to really care about this?
Well, my nursing career began working on an AIDS unit, and I went from AIDS to the oncology unit at Cedars-Sinai. I spent 10 years there doing bone marrow transplant, and then worked in hospice. And so in that line of work, we came across a lot of death. There's a lot of different types of death and dying, and you work with a lot of patients and families. So when I heard that they were working on the law very similar to what we had in Oregon and Washington, I was familiar with, I knew it was really the right thing for California. So as soon as the law was on the books, I started working with hospices, doing talks and getting some doctors here in Los Angeles on board and working with patients so that we can facilitate the entire process.
What were some of the frustrations that you saw in terms of people at end of life that couldn't make the choice of when they wanted to go? Are we talking about pain and suffering? Are we talking about these kinds of things that are just kind of unnecessary?
I think, well, a lot of it is pain and suffering and quality of life. But it's one thing to have a law. Another thing is to be able to use the law. How do we implement it? And I think there are a lot of misconceptions about what the law was. So there were a lot of institutions that, oh, we're not going to do this. We're not going to be involved in this. But the more patients who began to ask, I want death with dignity, or I want that law, people, and I've seen it in the last few years, I know our practice has gotten busier and busier. Every week it's gotten more people calling and asking about it. So generally, LA patient advocates consult with patients and families or with hospices. Say a hospice has a family that's asking about death with dignity. They don't do it within their hospice. They'll call us.
Okay.
We go in, talk with the patient and the family, explain what the process is, that here in California, as in most of, now we have 13 states in the United States that have medical aid and dying. New York just passed it. Delaware just passed it. And all those laws are fairly similar. They all use the GI system, meaning that the patient has to drink the medication, or we can also use it rectally so that the medication is absorbed that way. But it's all about the patient and the patient's choice of when they want and if they want to use medical aid and dying.
And then Grace, in bringing this back for the second time, were you surprised at the enthusiasm and the people that came and wanting to learn about this? Especially in this community, you would think these things are all sorted out, they have this all worked out, but people really don't.
Nobody wants to think about it, and they don't discuss it. And one of the big questions that came up to the panel last year was, do we involve our children? And Dr. True McMahon and Ulysses, Jansen, they said, even Dr. Jansen said, even his own mother didn't want to discuss it with him. And he said, here, I'm a physician. He said, but we have to discuss it with the families.
Right.
We have to have everybody on board. And then, like, getting back to the palliative care panel, this week I got a call from a friend who just sounded like she was on death's door, and she sounded terrific yesterday. And I said, you sound really great today. And she said, I got in touch with the social worker on the team, and this teamwork that we're doing is so wonderful. And she said, I can cope now. I have my family on board. See, we have to include the family.
Well, I think there's a lot of misnomers too about understanding what is palliative care
Oh,
as
yes.
opposed to hospice care.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I'll suggest to someone, maybe it's time to call in hospice. Well, not hospice, I'm not dying.
Yeah.
And what is the definition of how people benefit more the earlier they get on hospice because you
Yes.
get a social worker, you get volunteers,
even a
you're
chaplain if
getting
you want.
24/7. You have someone available to
Right.
help manage your symptoms.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think knowing that you have this team on board that's going to help with your comfort and the
Right.
care right up until the end of life is really, really important.
And that's the peace of mind part, right? Again, when you
Exactly.
deal with people and when you get all of this set up and they know what's going to happen, is there a sense of release from that?
Oh, I think there's
yes.
a sense of relief. There's a relief that's knowing that someone's going to be there. Or even if they choose to use medical aid and dying. Okay, now a lot of times I'll get calls from patients, maybe it's an ALS patient, someone who's been chronically ill. They want to know that, hey, I've gotten through the process, it's done, it's there.
Right.
And the way we work, it's 48 hours, so the whole process can take 3 to 5 days, not 2 weeks like some institutions. We can get it done in 3 to 5 days, but then the medication's there and available when and if the patient needs it. We always stress all along, you know you can change your mind at any time. Just because you've gone through the process doesn't mean that you'll use medical aid and dying.
That's right.
It's just there if and when you decide it's
Right.
the right choice for you.
Yeah, and it's like that kind of a directive in terms of here's the way I want to go, so people aren't questioning. And I think, do you feel like it, Grace, do you feel like it benefits people to say, okay, I've got all this settled. I don't need the kids to come in and say, here's what should we do?
Absolutely.
And especially if someone falls into a state where they can't communicate
Yes.
anymore, the decisions have been made,
This
right?
woman yesterday said, it's so wonderful that I can now tell my children to back off. They don't need to call my doctors anymore, because you know what happens? The family starts calling in the doctors. And especially if you're from whatever, I would say, like, I was indoctrinated in the Catholic Church. I always say I'm a recovering Catholic, because first we couldn't have cremation.
Right.
Okay, finally I got over that. We can have cremation. Now they have to know that they have the right. And so I have this wonderful testimony that was in the paper in 2007 at Little Company Mary Hospital up in Torrance, where I was at the time volunteering. And this woman wanted to just take off her oxygen. Sometimes they decided something simple as, we want to no longer have oxygen. Well, they had been being told that they couldn't do that.
Oh,
And
wow.
so they did this article on her, because the chaplain was there with hospice. We have chaplains, palliative, even chaplains. And the chaplain was there, her whole family was surrounding her, and they were removing the oxygen. I mean, how we need this.
But I think also it's understanding what those interventions are.
Right, step by
Sometimes you
step,
give someone
yeah.
a form and say, okay, now we need you to fill out these advanced
Check this
directives,
box, check
or
this
the
box.
pulse, and do you
Yeah.
want this, do you want that, do you not want that? And I did a program yesterday where we went through and really explained what each of those sections really mean. Because if you're in the doctor's office, you don't have time, even though Medicare does pay for one end-of-life visit with your physician to talk about these issues. But understanding what each of those interventions are, what they mean, what they don't mean, what happens when you actually do CPR on a patient? What's the likelihood that you'll actually come out of the hospital and be back to your regular
once they
self?
intubate them,
So
then they
the
have to
expert
take the
panel is
tube
going
out.
to be talking about all of these things and more. So they're going to discuss end-of-life options and preparing for the future. It's going to be Tuesday, July 22nd, 7 p.m., Gate 12, Clubhouse 2 in the Sequoia Ballroom.
Yes.
Grace and Karen, thank you guys so
Thank
much
you,
for joining us
Michael.
and
Thank you.
bringing us a very important
Blessings.
subject here to the village. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're
Thanks for
watching
your
This
time.
Day. We'll be right back.